The white lace of her wedding gown caught the harsh Texas wind as Hannah Catherine stood alone on the chapel steps, watching the dust cloud from her groom's departing horse settle over the horizon like a final goodbye. She had been waiting 3 hours now, her bouquet of wildflowers wilting in the midday sun, her hope fading with each passing minute until his brother had finally ridden up with the truth that cut deeper than any knife could. James had changed his mind, couldn't go through with it, had decided yesterday but lacked the courage to tell her himself. The coward had sent his own brother to deliver the news while Hannah stood before God and the whole town of Madisonville, Texas, dressed in her mother's altered wedding gown, waiting for a man who would never come. The whispers started immediately. She could hear them through the chapel's open windows. The good people of Madisonville already picking apart her reputation like vultures on a carcass. At 22 years old, she was already considered nearly too old for marriage by some standards, and now she would be known as the woman who wasn't even worth showing up for. Her father had died 2 years prior, and her mother had passed when she was just a girl. She had no one to defend her, no one to take her side. James's family owned half the businesses in town, and everyone knew which side they would choose. Hannah's hands shook as she gripped the bouquet tighter, her knuckles white against the stems. She wanted to run inside to hide from the stares and the pity, but her legs felt like lead. The Reverend had gone back inside, too embarrassed for her to even offer comfort. Her few friends had slowly dispersed, not knowing what to say, their own reputations to consider. She was utterly, completely alone. "Miss, I don't mean to intrude, but you look like you could use a friendly word." The voice was unfamiliar, deep and gentle, with a slight drawl that spoke of long days under open skies. Hannah turned to find a cowboy standing at the base of the chapel steps, his hat in his hands, dust covering his worn leather chaps and faded blue shirt. He couldn't have been much older than her, perhaps 25 or 26, with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes the color of strong coffee. He held himself with quiet confidence, the kind that came from facing down challenges rather than running from them. "I'm fine," she lied, her voice barely above a whisper. She couldn't even muster the strength to put conviction behind the words. "Begging your pardon, miss, but you don't look fine." He took a tentative step closer, his weathered face showing genuine concern rather than the morbid curiosity she had been subjected to all morning. "I was riding through, stopped to water my horse at the trough, and I couldn't help but notice the situation. I heard what happened." That's a terrible thing for any man to do to a woman. Hannah felt her composure crack. A single tear slid down her cheek before she could stop it. "Everyone knows. Everyone in this entire town now knows that I wasn't even worth the dignity of a proper rejection." "Then everyone in this town knows that the man was a fool," the cowboy said firmly. He climbed the steps until he stood just below her, respectful of her space but close enough that she could see the sincerity in his eyes. "I'm Thomas Harrison. Most folks call me Tom. I've been working ranches from here to New Mexico, and I've seen a lot of things, but I've never seen anyone treat a lady so poorly. If it would help at all with your standing in this town, I'll stand beside you. We could walk into that chapel right now, and I'll marry you proper. Give you my name, give you protection. No one would dare talk about Thomas Harrison's wife." Hannah stared at him, certain she had misheard. "You cannot be serious. You don't even know me." "I know you've been wronged. I know you're standing here with more courage than that coward showed. I know that sometimes the right thing to do is the thing that makes no sense on paper but makes perfect sense in your heart." He held her gaze steadily. "I've been alone a long time, miss. I've got money saved from years of ranch work, enough to buy some land and start something real. I've been looking for a sign about where to settle down, and maybe this is it. Maybe helping someone who needs help is exactly what I'm supposed to do." "This is insane," Hannah whispered, but even as she said it, she was calculating. What other choice did she have? Return to the small room she rented above the general store, face the pitying looks and knowing glances every day for the rest of her life. James's rejection had sealed her fate in this town. No other man would court her now, not when the richest family in Madisonville had deemed her unworthy. She would grow old alone, surviving on whatever work she could find, always the woman who was abandoned at the altar. "It is insane," Tom agreed with a small smile. "But sometimes the best things in life are a little bit crazy. I'm not asking you to love me. I'm not asking for anything except the chance to do something right in a world that often feels wrong. You need a husband to survive out here, and I need a reason to finally put down roots. We could help each other." Hannah looked down at her bouquet, at the flowers she had picked herself that morning when she still believed in fairy tales and happy endings. Then she looked at this stranger, this cowboy who had appeared out of nowhere with an offer that should have terrified her, but instead felt like a lifeline. "You would really do this? Marry a complete stranger just to save her reputation?" "I'd do it to save a good woman from an unfair fate," Tom corrected. "And something tells me you're a very good woman who's had some very bad luck." The chapel doors opened and Reverend Matthews peered out, his round face flushed with discomfort. "Miss Catherine, I hate to press, but there are people waiting to use the chapel for the afternoon service. I need to know if you're going to need any assistance or if you'll be taking your leave." Hannah looked at Tom, at this stranger offering her salvation. She thought about her tiny room, her dwindling savings, the looks she would receive every day for the rest of her life. Then she thought about possibility, about a future that might hold something better than pity and loneliness. "Reverend Matthews," she said, her voice stronger than before. "This is Thomas Harrison, and he's going to marry me today. If you wouldn't mind returning to your position, we can proceed with the ceremony." The Reverend's eyebrows shot up so high they nearly disappeared into his hairline. "Miss Catherine, I must counsel against hasty decisions made in emotional distress. And I must counsel against leaving a woman in distress when a solution presents itself," Tom said firmly, climbing the last step to stand beside Hannah. "The lady deserves to have her wedding day, Reverend." "Are you going to deny her that?" Reverend Matthews sputtered for a moment, clearly torn between propriety and the unusual circumstances. Finally, he sighed heavily. "Very well. But I'll need to see some form of identification from you, young man, and I'll need to know that Miss Catherine is entering into this of her own free will." "I am," Hannah said before she could second-guess herself. "Completely of my own free will." Tom pulled out his papers from his saddlebag, still tied to his horse near the water trough, and within minutes they were standing before the altar. The few remaining townspeople who had lingered to witness the scandal now pressed against the windows, their shocked faces peering in at this unexpected turn of events. Hannah caught sight of James's mother, her face purple with outrage, and felt a small surge of satisfaction cut through her numbness. The Reverend rushed through the ceremony with clear discomfort, perhaps fearing that one or both of them would come to their senses at any moment. Hannah's hands trembled as Tom took them gently in his own. His palms were calloused from hard work, warm and steady, so different from James's soft merchant hands. "Do you, Hannah Catherine, take this man, Thomas Harrison, to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, until death do you part?" This was her last chance to back out, to return to the life she knew even if it meant years of loneliness and shame. Hannah looked into Tom's dark eyes and saw patience there, and kindness, and a strength that James had never possessed. "I do," she said clearly. "And do you, Thomas Harrison, take this woman, Hannah Catherine, to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, until death do you part?" "I do," Tom said without hesitation, his voice solid as stone. "Then, by the power vested in me by the state of Texas, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Tom leaned in slowly, giving Hannah every opportunity to pull away, and pressed a chaste, gentle kiss to her lips. It was brief and respectful, but it sealed them together in the eyes of God and the law. When he pulled back, he smiled at her, and Hannah felt the first flutter of something in her chest. Not love, not yet, but maybe hope. They signed the marriage certificate with Reverend Matthews and 2 hastily gathered witnesses from the gawking crowd outside. The moment the Reverend pronounced them legally wed, Tom offered Hannah his arm. "Mrs. Harrison," he said, and the name sounded foreign to her ears, "shall we take our leave of this place?" "Yes," Hannah said, placing her hand on his arm. "Let's go." They walked out of the chapel together into the bright Texas sunshine. The crowd parted before them, silent with shock. Hannah held her head high, her wilted bouquet still clutched in one hand, her new husband steady beside her. She saw James's mother open her mouth to say something, but Tom fixed her with such a level stare that the woman actually stepped backward. "My horse is just over here," Tom said, guiding her toward a beautiful chestnut mare. "We'll need to get you a horse of your own, but for today, we can ride together. Do you have belongings we need to collect?" "Just a room above the general store," Hannah said. "Everything I own fits in 2 trunks. Then we'll collect them and be on our way. I've been eyeing some land about 15 miles west of here, near a creek with good water. We can camp there tonight, and tomorrow we'll ride into the next town to purchase supplies and file the land claim." The practicality of his words made everything suddenly real. This was not a dream or a moment of madness that would evaporate. She had actually married this man, this stranger, and now her entire life was about to change in ways she could not even imagine. They rode to the general store, and Hannah was grateful that Tom waited downstairs, dealing with the curious and increasingly hostile storekeeper while she packed her few possessions. Her wedding dress, the dress she had been so excited to wear just hours ago, she folded carefully and placed at the bottom of one trunk. Perhaps someday she would want to remember today, though she could not imagine why. Tom carried her trunks down as though they weighed nothing and secured them to his horse with practiced efficiency. Then he helped Hannah mount, and she settled into the saddle in front of him, acutely aware of his solid presence behind her, his arms coming around to hold the reins on either side. "Are you comfortable?" he asked quietly, his breath warm against her ear. "As comfortable as I can be," she admitted. "It's going to be all right, Hannah," he said, and the way he said her name, gentle and sure, made her want to believe him. "I know this is all happening very fast, and I know you have no reason to trust me yet. But I give you my word as a man of honor that I will never harm you, never mistreat you, and never give you cause to regret saying yes today." "I don't even know you," Hannah said, the reality of what she had done crashing over her in waves now that they were leaving town. "I don't know where you're from, or what kind of man you are, or what you expect from me as a wife." "Then we'll spend the ride getting to know each other," Tom said reasonably. "I'll tell you everything you want to know, and you can tell me about yourself. We've got time, Hannah. We've got all the time in the world." As they rode out of Madisonville, Hannah looked back once at the town she had called home for 2 years, the town where she had thought she would build a life with James. "Good riddance," she thought with surprising vehemence. The town disappeared behind them as they followed the dusty road west, and Hannah felt the tight knot in her chest begin to loosen ever so slightly. "So tell me about Thomas Harrison," she said, as the rhythmic motion of the horse began to relax her. "Where are you from originally?" "Born in Missouri," Tom said, his voice easy and conversational. "My father was a farmer. My mother died when I was young, similar to you. I had 3 brothers and 2 sisters, and the farm was never big enough to support all of us. When I was 17, I headed west to make my own way. I've worked cattle drives, ranches, even did some time as a deputy in a small town in New Mexico, though that wasn't for me. I'm 26 now, and I've saved most of what I've earned over the years because I never had anything to spend it on." "Why didn't you ever settle down before?" Hannah asked. "Never found the right reason," Tom said honestly. "I saw men marry for the wrong reasons, for convenience or loneliness, and the marriages were miserable. I figured if I was going to marry, it should mean something. It should be because I could make someone's life better and they could make mine better. Maybe that's exactly what we've got here, even if we arrived at it in an unusual way." Hannah considered this. "What do you expect from me as your wife?" Tom was quiet for a moment, and she could feel him choosing his words carefully. "I expect honesty. I expect respect. I expect that we'll work together to build something good. As for the rest, the intimate parts of marriage, that's entirely up to you and when you feel ready. I meant what I said about this being a marriage to help you. I won't push you into anything you're not comfortable with." The tension Hannah had been carrying in her shoulders eased considerably. "Thank you for that. I appreciate your understanding. Tell me about you," Tom said. "How did you end up in Madisonville?" Hannah took a breath and began her story. She told him about growing up in Arkansas, about her mother's death when she was 8, about her father's struggle to raise her alone while working as a blacksmith. She told him about her father's death 2 years ago, about the debts that had consumed everything they owned, about her decision to move to Texas to start fresh. "I worked as a seamstress," she explained. "I'm quite good with a needle. I made dresses for the ladies in town, did alterations and repairs. That's how I met James. His mother commissioned a dress, and he came to pick it up one day. He started courting me, and I thought I had finally found my place in the world. I thought I had found security and belonging. I was clearly wrong." "His loss," Tom said firmly. "A woman with skills like that who can support herself and work hard, that's valuable. That's a partner. He was a fool to let you go." They rode in companionable silence for a while, the landscape gradually changing as they left the town behind. The prairie stretched out in all directions, golden grass rippling in the wind like waves on an ocean. The sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "There," Tom said, pointing toward a line of trees in the distance. "That's the creek I was telling you about. The land around it is unclaimed, good grass, good water, protection from the wind. It's perfect for starting a ranch." As they drew closer, Hannah could see what had attracted Tom to this place. The creek ran clear and swift over smooth stones, cottonwood trees providing shade along its banks. The land rolled gently, offering natural windbreaks and good grazing. It was beautiful in a wild, untamed way. Tom helped Hannah dismount, and while she stretched her legs stiff from the long ride, he began unpacking supplies from his saddlebags. He had a bedroll, a canvas tarp, cooking supplies, and enough food for several days. He worked with efficient, practiced movements, clearly a man used to camping under the stars. "I'll set up a shelter for you," he said, "and I'll sleep under the stars. Tomorrow we can head to the nearest town, buy supplies, and start building something more permanent." Hannah watched him work, this stranger who was now her husband. He moved with quiet confidence, driving stakes into the ground for the tarp, gathering wood for a fire. When he had a good blaze going, he set a pot of coffee to boil and pulled out some dried beef and hardtack. "I apologize for the simple fare," he said, handing her a tin plate. "Tomorrow we'll stock up on proper supplies, and I'll look forward to seeing what you can do with a real kitchen." "Can you cook?" Hannah asked, accepting the plate. "Enough to keep myself alive on the trail," Tom said with a slight smile. "But I won't pretend to be any good at it. If you're willing, I'd appreciate having meals that don't taste like leather and regret." Hannah found herself smiling, a genuine smile, the first since this morning's disaster. "I can cook. My father taught me. He said a person should know how to feed themselves properly regardless of whether they are male or female. Your father sounds like he was a wise man." "He was," Hannah said softly. "I miss him every day." They ate in comfortable silence, and as the stars began to appear overhead, Hannah felt the enormity of the day settling over her. She was married, to a man she had met just hours ago. She was sitting by a campfire in the middle of nowhere, her entire life changed in the span of an afternoon. "Are you all right?" Tom asked gently, seeing the expression on her face. "I don't know," Hannah admitted. "This morning I woke up thinking I knew exactly what my life would be. Now everything is different. I don't know if I'm all right or not." "That's fair," Tom said. "This has been quite a day for you. For both of us, really. Why don't you get some rest? Tomorrow will be busy, and things might look clearer in the morning light." Hannah nodded and retreated to the shelter Tom had constructed. It was simple but effective, the tarp blocking the wind and providing privacy. She had her bedroll and blankets, and as she lay down, still wearing the simple dress she had changed into after leaving her wedding gown behind, she stared up at the canvas above her head. What had she done? Married a complete stranger on the worst day of her life. It was reckless and impulsive and completely unlike her. But as she listened to Tom moving around the campsite, banking the fire and settling down for the night, she did not feel afraid. Uncertain, yes. Overwhelmed, absolutely. But not afraid. Tom Harrison had stood beside her when no one else would. He had offered her a way out when she had no other options. And he had done it with kindness and respect, asking for nothing in return. Maybe that was worth taking a chance on. Maybe that was worth building a life on. Hannah closed her eyes and, against all odds, fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. She woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of birds singing in the cottonwood trees. For a moment, she was disoriented, unsure where she was or why she was sleeping on the ground. Then the memories came flooding back and she sat up quickly, her heart pounding. "Good morning," Tom called from the fire. "Coffee's ready when you are." Hannah emerged from the shelter, finger combing her hair into some semblance of order. Tom was already dressed and moving about the camp, clearly an early riser. He poured her a cup of coffee and handed it over with a small smile. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I expected," Hannah admitted, accepting the cup gratefully. "What's the plan for today?" "We'll ride to Cedar Ridge, the next town over. It's bigger than Madisonville with better supplies. We'll need tools, lumber, food staples, seeds if we can get them. I'd like to purchase another horse for you and maybe a wagon if we can afford it. Then we'll come back here and start building." "Building what, exactly?" "A cabin to start with," Tom said. "Nothing fancy at first, just 4 walls and a roof, but we'll make it tight and warm before winter comes. After that, we'll need a barn for the livestock I plan to buy and fences and eventually a proper house. But we'll take it one step at a time." Hannah sipped her coffee, considering the enormous amount of work ahead of them. "I've never built anything before." "I've built plenty," Tom assured her, "and I'm a patient teacher. Between the two of us, we'll manage just fine." They broke camp efficiently, and within an hour they were riding toward Cedar Ridge. Hannah sat in front of Tom again, growing more accustomed to his presence behind her, the steady warmth of him, the way he held the reins with capable hands. They talked as they rode, sharing more about their lives, their likes and dislikes, their hopes for the future. Tom told her about his dream of raising horses, breeding quality stock that could handle the harsh Texas conditions. Hannah told him about her love of reading, how she had saved what little money she could to buy books, and how she dreamed of having a whole shelf full of them someday. "We'll get you your books," Tom promised. "A home should have books, and music too if you like. Can you play anything?" "My mother taught me piano before she died," Hannah said wistfully, "but I haven't touched one in years." "Then we'll get a piano," Tom said as if it were the simplest thing in the world. "Maybe not right away, but eventually. A home should have the things that bring joy." Cedar Ridge was indeed larger than Madisonville, a bustling town with wide streets and numerous businesses. Tom helped Hannah dismount in front of the general store, and they went inside together. The proprietor, a heavy-set man with a friendly face, greeted them warmly. "What can I help you folks with today? We need supplies," Tom said, pulling out a list he had written that morning. "Building supplies, food staples, tools, seeds, pretty much everything needed to start a homestead." The proprietor's eyes lit up at the prospect of such a large sale. "You're in luck. We just got a shipment in from the east. Let's see what we can do for you." For the next 2 hours, Tom and Hannah selected supplies, filling up a wagon that Tom purchased from the livery next door. They bought lumber and nails, a good saw and hammer, cooking pots and pans, flour and sugar and coffee, seeds for a vegetable garden, chickens in crates, and countless other necessities. Tom paid for everything with cash from a leather pouch, and Hannah was startled to see how much money he had saved. "Are you sure you want to spend all of this?" she asked quietly as the proprietor tallied up their purchases. "What else would I spend it on?" Tom replied. "This is what I've been saving for, a chance to build something real." "This is exactly right." They also visited the dress shop, where Tom insisted Hannah purchase fabric and supplies for making new clothes, as well as 2 ready-made dresses that actually fit her properly. At the livery, they found a gentle mare named Rosie, perfect for Hannah to ride, and Tom bought her without haggling over the price. "She's yours," he said, handing Hannah the reins. "Every woman should have her own horse." By the time they left Cedar Ridge, their wagon was full to bursting, the chickens clucking indignantly from their crates, both horses plodding along under their burdens. Tom drove the wagon while Hannah rode Rosie alongside him, getting a feel for her new mare's temperament. "She's wonderful," Hannah called over to Tom. "Thank you. You're welcome," Tom called back. "A good horse makes all the difference out here." They made it back to the creek by late afternoon and immediately set to work unloading the wagon. Tom staked out an area for the cabin, pacing off the dimensions and marking the corners with stakes. "We'll start with the foundation tomorrow," he explained. "Get the floor joists set and the flooring down. Then we'll frame up the walls. If we work hard, we should have it enclosed within 2 weeks, 3 at the most." Hannah looked at the marked-out space, trying to imagine walls and a roof, a place to call home. "Where will we sleep while we're building?" "I'll set up the tent I bought," Tom said, gesturing to one of their new purchases. "It's big enough for both of us, with a divider down the middle for privacy. We'll manage until the cabin is ready." True to his word, Tom set up the large canvas tent, hanging a blanket down the center to create 2 separate spaces. It was cramped but functional, and Hannah appreciated his continued respect for her comfort and modesty. That night, they cooked their first real meal together over the campfire. Hannah made biscuits in a Dutch oven, and fried up some of the bacon they had purchased, while Tom tended the fire and set up a makeshift table using boards and crates. When they sat down to eat, the meal felt like a small celebration, a marker of their new beginning. "This is delicious," Tom said, biting into a biscuit. "I haven't had cooking this good in years." "It's just biscuits and bacon," Hannah said, but she felt pleased by his appreciation. "It's made with care," Tom corrected. "That makes all the difference." Over the following weeks, they fell into a rhythm. They woke with the sun, worked through the day on the cabin, and fell into their respective sides of the tent each night exhausted but satisfied. Tom was indeed a patient teacher, showing Hannah how to measure and cut lumber, how to drive nails straight, how to fit joints together. Her hands developed blisters that hardened into calluses, her back ached from the unaccustomed labor, but she felt a fierce pride in watching the cabin take shape. Tom worked shirtless in the heat, and Hannah found herself watching him when she thought he was not looking. He was strongly built, his body lean and muscled from years of hard work. He moved with economical grace, never wasting motion, always efficient and focused. And he was kind, unfailingly kind, quick with a smile and a word of encouragement when she struggled with a task. She found herself thinking about him more and more as the days passed. The way he always made sure she ate enough, the way he set aside the easiest tasks for her when she was particularly tired, the way he talked about their future with such certainty and hope. This was not the marriage she had imagined, but it was becoming something real, something solid. One evening, about 3 weeks after their wedding, they were sitting by the fire after a particularly long day of work. The cabin walls were up, and the roof framing was nearly complete. They were both filthy and exhausted, but the sense of accomplishment was tangible. "We make a good team," Tom said, poking at the fire with a stick. "I couldn't have done this nearly as fast without your help." "I never knew I could do this kind of work," Hannah admitted. "I always thought I was only good with a needle and thread." "You're good at a lot of things," Tom said, looking over at her with warm eyes. "You're strong and smart and you don't give up. Those are the things that matter out here." Hannah felt heat rise in her cheeks that had nothing to do with the fire. "Tom, can I ask you something? Anything? Why did you really do it? Why did you really marry me that day? You said it was to help me, but there must have been more to it than that. You gave up your freedom, your money, everything you had worked for. Why?" Tom was quiet for a long moment, staring into the flames. When he finally spoke, his voice was thoughtful and measured. "My father used to tell me that a man's character is defined by what he does when no one is watching, when there's nothing in it for him. I was riding through that town, and I saw you standing there, and I saw a chance to be the kind of man my father raised me to be. A man who helps when he can, who stands up when others walk away. But I'll be honest with you, Hannah. It wasn't entirely selfless." Hannah's heart began to beat faster. "What do you mean?" "I mean that I took one look at you, standing there with your head held high despite everything, and I thought you were the most beautiful, courageous woman I had ever seen. I thought that if I let you walk away, I would spend the rest of my life wondering what might have been. So yes, I married you to help you, but I also married you because I wanted to, because something told me that you were exactly the person I had been looking for all these years without knowing it." Hannah stared at him, her breath caught in her throat. "Tom, I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Tom said gently. "I'm not telling you this to pressure you. I just wanted you to know the truth. I care about you, Hannah. These past weeks, getting to know you, working beside you, I've come to care about you more than I thought possible in such a short time. But I understand if you don't feel the same way. I understand if you still think of this as just an arrangement." "I don't," Hannah said quickly, surprising herself with the vehemence of her response. "I don't think of it as just an arrangement anymore. I think about you all the time. I look forward to the mornings because it means seeing you. I find myself watching you work and thinking how lucky I am that you stopped in Madisonville that day. I was so heartbroken over James, but now I realize he did me the greatest favor of my life by not showing up. Because if he had, I never would have met you. Tom set down his stick and moved closer to her, the firelight dancing across his features. Hannah, are you saying what I think you're saying? I'm saying that this marriage doesn't feel like an arrangement anymore, Hannah said, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. It feels real. You feel real. And I want it to be real in every way. Tom reached out and cupped her face gently in his calloused hands. Are you sure? Because once we cross this line, there's no going back. I need to know you're sure. I'm sure, Hannah whispered. I've never been more sure of anything. Tom kissed her then, not the chaste peck they had shared at their wedding, but a real kiss, deep and passionate and full of all the feeling that had been building between them for weeks. Hannah kissed him back, her hands coming up to tangle in his hair, her body pressing against his. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Tom rested his forehead against hers. I love you, Hannah Harrison, he said softly. I know it's fast and I know it's crazy, but I love you. I love you too, Hannah said, and saying the words felt like coming home. I love you so much. They made love that night in the tent, gentle and passionate and full of discovery. Tom was patient and careful, making sure Hannah felt safe and cherished. And as Hannah lay in his arms afterward, listening to his steady heartbeat beneath her ear, she felt a peace she had never known before. This was where she belonged, with this man in this place, building this life. The next morning they took down the dividing blanket in the tent, no longer needing the separation. They worked on the cabin with renewed energy, driven by their love and their shared vision for the future. Within another week, the roof was complete and they moved into their new home, simple as it was. Tom built them a real bed frame, and Hannah sewed curtains for the windows. They plastered the walls against the coming winter and built a massive fireplace for warmth and cooking. Hannah planted a vegetable garden while Tom built a chicken coop and a small corral for the horses. As summer turned to autumn, they acquired more livestock. Tom bought a bull and several cows, the foundation of the herd he hoped to build. Hannah's garden flourished, providing them with fresh vegetables that she canned and preserved for winter. They worked from sunup to sundown, but it never felt like drudgery because they were working together, building something that belonged to them. News of their homestead spread, and neighbors began to appear. Other homesteaders and ranchers scattered across the vast Texas landscape. They were invited to barn raisings and church socials, and Tom and Hannah went, building friendships and connections in this new community. No one asked about their hasty marriage or strange beginning. Out here, people were judged by their character and their work ethic, not their past. Winter came, cold and harsh, but the cabin kept them warm and safe. They spent long evenings by the fire, Tom carving tools and mending tack while Hannah sewed or read aloud from the books they had slowly acquired. They talked about everything and nothing, learning each other's thoughts and dreams with the intimacy of true partners. One February morning, Hannah woke feeling ill. She barely made it outside before her stomach rebelled, and when she came back in, pale and shaking, Tom was immediately concerned. "What's wrong? Are you sick? Should I ride for the doctor?" Hannah sat down on the edge of the bed, her hand pressed to her stomach, and smiled despite her discomfort. "I don't think a doctor is necessary, at least not for several more months." It took Tom a moment to understand, and then his face transformed with joy. "You're going to have a baby." "We're going to have a baby." "Yes," Hannah said, laughing at his expression. "We're going to be parents." Tom swept her into his arms, holding her carefully as if she might break. "This is the best news I've ever had. A baby, our baby. Hannah, I'm so happy I could shout it from the rooftops." "We don't have rooftops out here," Hannah teased. "You'll have to settle for shouting it across the prairie." Tom did exactly that, running outside and letting out a whoop of joy that probably carried for miles. Hannah watched from the doorway, her hand on her still flat stomach, and felt overwhelmed with happiness. A year ago, she had been abandoned and humiliated, certain her life was over. Now she was standing in the home she had helped build, watching the man she loved celebrate the child they had created together. Life had a strange way of working out. The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Hannah continued working around the homestead, though Tom insisted she take on lighter tasks as she grew larger. He was endlessly solicitous, making sure she rested enough, ate enough, had everything she needed. Some of the neighbor women came to visit, bringing baby clothes and advice, welcoming Hannah into the community of mothers. In late September, as the heat of summer finally broke, Hannah went into labor. Tom rode like the devil himself was chasing him to fetch the midwife, Mrs. Patterson, from the nearest homestead. The labor was long and difficult, lasting nearly a full day, and Tom paced outside the cabin like a caged animal, terrified and helpless. Finally, as the sun was setting, he heard the thin, reedy cry of a newborn baby. Mrs. Patterson emerged from the cabin, tired but smiling. "You have a son, Mr. Harrison, a healthy boy, and your wife is doing just fine." Tom nearly knocked her over in his haste to get inside. Hannah was propped up in their bed, exhausted and sweaty but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in blankets. She looked up as he entered, her eyes full of love and wonder. "Tom, meet your son." Tom approached slowly, almost reverently, and looked down at the baby in Hannah's arms. He was tiny and red-faced, with a shock of dark hair and eyes that would probably turn the same coffee color as his father's. Tom reached out with one finger and stroked the baby's impossibly soft cheek, and felt his heart expand in a way he had not known was possible. "He's perfect," Tom whispered. "You're both perfect. Hannah, thank you. Thank you for this, for him, for everything." "What should we name him?" Hannah asked. Tom thought for a moment, then smiled. "What about Samuel? It was my father's name, Samuel Harrison." "Samuel Harrison," Hannah repeated, looking down at her son. "It's perfect. Hello, Samuel. Welcome to the world." Mrs. Patterson stayed for a few days to help Hannah recover and teach Tom how to care for the baby. Tom took to fatherhood with the same dedication he brought to everything else, changing diapers and walking the floor with Samuel when he cried, utterly devoted to his tiny son. As the months passed, Samuel grew strong and healthy, filling the cabin with his gurgles and cries. The homestead continued to prosper. Tom's herd grew, and he gained a reputation for raising quality cattle. Hannah's sewing skills brought in extra money as neighboring women commissioned dresses and alterations. They added on to the cabin, building additional rooms, making it a true home. 3 years after Samuel's birth, Hannah gave birth to twin daughters, whom they named Elizabeth and Grace. Tom was completely overwhelmed by the presence of 3 young children, but he was also completely in love with his growing family. The cabin rang with laughter and the patter of little feet, and Tom and Hannah fell into bed each night exhausted, but deeply content. The years flowed by like the creek that ran through their property, steady and sure. Samuel grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved the horses, and spent every moment he could in the barn with his father. Elizabeth inherited her mother's skill with a needle, and could often be found sewing doll clothes with intense concentration. Grace was wild and free, always climbing trees and exploring, driving her parents to distraction with her fearlessness. Tom and Hannah's love deepened with each passing year, growing from the passionate intensity of new love into something richer and more profound. They knew each other's rhythms and habits, could communicate with a glance, worked together with the efficiency of long practice. They still stole moments alone when they could, still made each other laugh, still looked at each other across the dinner table, and felt grateful for the strange twist of fate that had brought them together. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Tom took Hannah into town, leaving the children with a trusted neighbor for the day. They had lunch at the hotel restaurant, a rare luxury, and Tom presented Hannah with a gift wrapped in brown paper. "What's this?" Hannah asked, surprised. "Open it and see." Hannah unwrapped the package carefully and gasped. Inside were 3 books, beautiful leather-bound volumes, including one she had mentioned wanting years ago and did not think he had even been listening. "Tom, these are too expensive. You shouldn't have." "You deserve beautiful things," Tom said firmly. "You've worked so hard, given me so much. I wanted to give you something that would bring you joy." Hannah's eyes filled with tears. Even after all these years, he still found ways to show her how much he cared, still remembered the small things she mentioned in passing. "I love you," she said, reaching across the table to take his hand. "I love you more now than I did the day I married you, and I didn't think that was possible." "I love you too," Tom said, squeezing her hand. "Marrying you was the best decision I ever made, even if I had to do it in the most unconventional way possible." They laughed together, remembering that day 10 years ago when a desperate woman and a passing cowboy had made a choice that changed both their lives forever. As they rode home that evening, the setting sun painting the sky in brilliant colors, Hannah leaned back against Tom's chest and sighed contentedly. "You ever wonder what would have happened if you had just ridden past that chapel, if you had not stopped to help?" "I think about it sometimes," Tom admitted. "And then I thank God that I listened to my heart instead of my head, because my head would have told me to keep riding, that it was not my problem, that I had no business getting involved. But my heart told me to stop, to help, to take a chance. And my heart was right." "My heart was right too," Hannah said softly. "When it told me to trust you, to take the chance you were offering. It was the scariest thing I ever did, saying yes to you that day. But it was also the best thing I ever did." The children were overjoyed to have them home, talking over each other to tell their parents about their day. Tom scooped up Grace, who launched herself at him, while Hannah gathered Samuel and Elizabeth into her arms. They went inside their home, warm and welcoming, filled with the evidence of their life together. After the children were in bed, Tom and Hannah sat on the porch they had built 2 years ago, watching the stars come out one by one. The night was peaceful, filled with the sounds of crickets and the occasional lowing of cattle from the pasture. "I want more of this," Hannah said suddenly. "More years, more memories, more life with you." "You'll have it," Tom promised, pulling her close. "We'll have a whole lifetime together, Hannah. I'll make sure of it." And he did. They had many more years together, watching their children grow and marry and have children of their own. Samuel took over the ranch, expanding it into one of the most successful operations in the county. Elizabeth married a kind young man who worked as a teacher, and they stayed close by. Grace surprised everyone by becoming a doctor, one of the first female doctors in Texas, and made her parents incredibly proud. Tom and Hannah grew old together, their hair turning silver, their hands growing gnarled with age, but their love never diminishing. They still held hands as they walked around their property, still stole kisses when they thought no one was looking, still looked at each other with the same wonder they had felt all those years ago. On a warm spring morning, 52 years after their wedding day, Hannah woke to find Tom had already risen and was sitting on the porch, looking out over the land they had built together. She brought him coffee and sat beside him, and they watched the sun rise together as they had done thousands of times before. "You have any regrets?" Tom asked her, his voice raspy with age but still warm. "Not a single one," Hannah said firmly. "You gave me everything I ever wanted and so much more than I knew to ask for. You gave me love and partnership and family and home. How could I possibly have regrets?" "I was just checking," Tom said with a smile. "Because I don't have any either. Best decision I ever made, stopping at that chapel. Best decision I ever made, saying yes to a crazy cowboy who proposed to a complete stranger." They sat in comfortable silence, hands intertwined, watching their grandchildren play in the yard below. Samuel's oldest son was teaching the younger children to ride, their laughter ringing out across the morning air. "We did good, didn't we?" Tom said softly. "We did better than good," Hannah replied. "We built something beautiful, something that will last long after we're gone." They both knew that their time was growing short. Tom's heart was weak, and Hannah's body ached with the wear of decades of hard work. But they faced the future as they had faced everything else, together and unafraid. Tom passed first, quietly in his sleep on a cold December night, with Hannah holding his hand. He was 78 years old and had lived a full, rich life. The funeral was attended by what seemed like half of Texas, all the lives they had touched over the years, all the people who had benefited from Tom's kindness and Hannah's strength. Hannah grieved deeply, but without bitterness. She had been blessed with 52 years of love and partnership, more than many people got in a lifetime. She continued living in the home they had built together, surrounded by her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, telling stories about their grandfather, the cowboy who had stopped to help a stranger and found his soulmate. Hannah followed Tom 2 years later, passing peacefully in her sleep at the age of 76. She was buried beside him on a hill overlooking their ranch, the headstone simple but heartfelt. The family gathered every year on their anniversary to place flowers and remember the love story that had started it all. Samuel's grandson, another Thomas Harrison, eventually wrote down the story his great-grandmother had told him as a child, about the woman who was abandoned at the chapel and the passing cowboy who said he would stand beside her. He published it as a local history, a testament to the kind of love that built the West, the kind of courage and faith that turned strangers into partners and partners into legends. The Harrison Ranch continued to operate for another 3 generations, a monument to what Tom and Hannah had built together. And while the buildings eventually crumbled and the land was sold, the story lived on, passed down through the family, a reminder that sometimes the worst moments of our lives are simply doorways to the best moments we have yet to experience. In Madisonville, Texas, the chapel where Hannah had waited for a groom who never came still stood, though much modified over the years. And sometimes, on quiet Sunday mornings, older residents claimed they could see the ghost of a young cowboy standing on the steps, his hat in his hands, waiting to offer help to anyone who needed it. Whether it was true or just a story, it reminded people that kindness and courage never truly die. They just take new forms, inspiring new generations to stop when they could keep riding, to help when they could turn away, to love when it would be easier to stay alone. And so the story of Tom and Hannah Harrison became part of the fabric of Texas history, a love story born from heartbreak and transformed through courage into something beautiful and lasting. They had taken a chance on each other when it made no logical sense, and they had been rewarded with a lifetime of love and partnership. Their legacy lived on not just in their descendants, but in the very idea that sometimes the right thing to do is the thing that seems crazy, that sometimes a stranger's kindness can change the entire course of your life, and that sometimes the greatest love stories start with the simplest words. "I'll stand beside you." 3 words spoken on a chapel step 52 years ago. 3 words that changed 2 lives and created a family and built a legacy that would endure for generations. 3 words that proved that love does not always arrive the way we expect it, but when it does arrive, when real love shows up and offers its hand, the only thing to do is take it and hold on tight and never let go. Tom and Hannah Harrison had done exactly that, and they had built a beautiful life together, one day at a time, one choice at a time, one moment of courage at a time. And that, in the end, was all any love story really needed to be.